Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited about our program this afternoon. My name's Aaron Peterson. I'm one of the assistant directors over at the Center for Career Development. I have with us a very special guest speaker who I will introduce momentarily. We're going to go over a little bit of our agenda, what you can expect today. But I'm hoping some of you are sitting outside enjoying this weather, because I know sometimes it's hard to make an afternoon program when it's so nice out. So today's brief agenda, first of all, I just want to congratulate class of 2021. And I know it's been a wild, last year and a half, but, hopefully it's a moment of celebration and not too much of a moment of stress, although, you can always rely on Center for Career Development to help ease some of those stresses. We'll talk a little bit about how you can continue to use our services after you graduate. So today I'm going to go over a little bit of the participation instructions. You might not be familiar with this type of webinar or this system, so we'll go over how you can participate in the webinar. Clinton will be giving us a really nice talk today about his background, UConn alum and working for TikTok now. We will have time for a Q&A at the end. During this Q&A, please feel free to submit questions, questions related to Clinton's career decisions, paths, those sorts of things. Unfortunately, we can't really answer any questions related to business decisions related to TikTok or affiliate companies or anything like that. But feel free to submit any other types of questions that you think would be helpful for those to know. At the end, we'll give you a brief video that the Center for Career Development put together just as a celebration for this momentous achievement. And you'll see some highlights from all of our campuses. So in today's webinar, the way that you'll participate, you should see your attendee interface on your desktop in the upper right-hand corner. So you're listening using your computer speaker by default. If you want to join over the phone, you can select phone call in the audio pane, and all that dial-in information will be there for you. So you can submit those text questions by typing your questions into the question pane. So I'll be monitoring that throughout the course of today's presentation. And I'll address those, and Clinton will address those in that question and answer period. Today's presentation is being recorded, so you will receive that recording generally within about 24 hours. So enough of me talking. I know you came here to listen from one of your esteemed alums here. So I'd like to introduce to you Clinton. He's a human resources leader with over 10 years of experience working for multinational corporations. Clinton was born in New Haven, starting off in New York City. His career has provided him the opportunity to live and work internationally as well, having spent 5 years abroad in both Dubai and Geneva. Always advocating for New Haven pizza, he tells us. And so I know there's some polarizing ideas about the best pizza, but I think many people can agree that New Haven's where it's at. Clinton has a passion and understanding for enabling people in organizational settings. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology as a UConn alumnus, and also has a Master of Arts in Industrial Organizational Psychology from NYU. He currently works at TikTok, having spent nearly 10 years with PepsiCo, covering multiple fields within HR, including analytics, business partnering, strategy, talent management, and organization development. Despite several years away, Clinton still has that Husky pride and is excited to engage with UConn's graduating class. Now I'm excited to have him here. And so I'd like to turn it over to you, Clinton.
Thanks, Aaron. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining on a Sunday afternoon. So I'm super humbled. I really appreciate it. I have to give a few shout outs to kick off. So I'm Clinton, Christina, Beth, Aaron, Steve, Tara, and the others at the UConn Center for Career Development had invited me to speak, kind of share a little inspiration and hopefully a story that'll be useful for all of you as you graduate and start in your new journey in the workforce. So I'm glad to be here. Hope this is helpful for you. This is for all of you. I also have to give a shout out to Angela and Mers for the Asian American Cultural Center, who are co-sponsoring this and who I owe a lot to as well. What else? A few things to open quickly. I'd be remiss not to mention some of the current events currently affecting our Black and African American communities, in addition to our elderly Asian American communities. There's a lot going on in addition to the pandemic. So appreciate all of you making the time given what's going on in your own personal lives, to learn something. Lastly, for me, really, this is going to be pretty casual. It's not going to be some fancy TED Talk, if you will. This is me sharing my experiences, and you'll see I'll have a lot to share about kind of my experiences. So let's dive in. So a little bit about me. Aaron shared a nice overview, but really, I'm from New Haven. Grew up in the area, went to UConn, graduated about 10 years ago. And newsflash, I'm not famous. I'm not a Nobel laureate. I won't be offended if you assumed I was famous and you want to leave at this moment. That's fine. I will not take offense. But point being, I'm kind of one of you, really, like someone who graduated from UConn, had a few interesting, unique things happen in my career, and I want to share them back. And kind of to come back to the point and the topic of this session is there's a lot in your career path you can't control. And there's a lot you can. I've got a picture of my son here who's 8 months tomorrow. You can't prepare for some things, like how it'll feel to enter parenthood, right? So I shoved them in here just because I'm a proud father, but well, that'll be kind of the central theme that we'll cover today. So anyone who knows me knows that I'm pretty planful about most things. I can be super over analytical about even mundane things like purchases on Amazon. But I can be quite spontaneous too under right conditions. And you'll see one of the key takeaways I kind of would like all of you to have from this session is, yes, be planful, but be ready for these, what we'll call chance events. And when you recognize these chance events, and we'll go through a few in my career, kind of have to like see if it's the right time for you and take that leap. So be planful, but also be spontaneous in some situations. So after graduating, just to highlight a few of the cool things that I, as someone growing up in Connecticut, never thought I would do. This is not to like flex or anything. This is really genuinely, I never thought I would do these things. I was super lucky. Here are some tips that, you know, might lead to you experiencing cool things. So I got to work abroad for 5 years. Lived in Dubai for about 2.5 of those. Lived in Geneva for about 2.5 for those. Traveled the heck out of the Middle East and Europe and the world. That was an experience I'll keep forever, and was unlocked through some of the things I'll share later on. I went from a shared apartment in Port Chester, New York, to living in the Burj Khalifa. For those of you who don't know, it's the tallest building in the world. Super unreal, right? And again, not a flex, but just so unreal on what can be unlocked when you do some of these things and take some of these steps to put yourself in a better position. I didn't expect to spend the first half of my career working in HR analytics. You'll see later on, that was a field that didn't really have much attention, let alone exist explicitly when I was in school. So we'll touch on that later. And lastly, I never expected to work for TikTok, right? This company didn't exist when I graduated. I never thought I'd move into the tech space. So we'll go into that in more detail later on. So coming back to this theme of kind of what can you control and what's by chance, I want to, there's a super simple diagram at the bottom, but I thought it was useful to explain some of my experiences. So some things on the left happen purely by chance, right? Struck by lightning, that kind of pure chance, right? And some things you plan and it happens exactly as you planned. Most of the time, it's somewhere in the middle, right? And Beth tuned me into this. Apparently it's part of career theory and all this stuff. So planned happenstance, it really resonated with me. And so I wanted to share that with you. Lots of things you plan a lot, but it also depends on chance events happening. And so it's kind of a mix. It's always somewhere in the middle. And you'll see later on, I've got some of these pivot points I'll call out to talk about where in the spectrum those fell and how much it was me preparing and controlling my path, how much was just pure luck. The theme you'll see here is really, you can always do something to put yourself in a better position. I'll touch on these four kind of principles that I think will be helpful. They definitely help shape how I think in terms of my mentality. Those are growth, fit, authenticity, and grit. And so on the next slide, I'll get into that. But overall, just want you to take some inspiration away from this, right? This is not going to be a super theoretical session. This is not going to be one of your lectures. This is a real story from me, and consider it yourself. Fast forward to 10 years into the future, if you will. Not all of you are going to go into HR, I know, but some of these principles can be applied to any major or to any profession, really. So more on these principles. So I mentioned before, I'm not going to drain this, but really these help me think about where I want to be and where I am in my career. So the first being growth. You probably heard of a growth mindset before. This is real. It's really kind of putting yourself out there. Name all the cliches, right? Stepping outside your box, your comfort zone. These are really important because they stretch you as a person. They help you confirm, what am I good at? What am I not good at? What do I enjoy? What do I hate? These are important when you're trying to figure out where you want to go in your career. The next one is fit. It's going to sound very HR-y, but I promise you it's real. You probably will get those emails that say, hey, thanks for your application. I'm sorry, it's not a fit for us. So depending on the company and their motivations, that could be just a generic line or it's real. But I think most of the time it's real. And that's because you're a unique person, right? In addition to your skill sets, your educational background, your personality, all this has to fit within a company and a role. And you think about your combination of all those things and how many companies are out there with different cultures, how many roles are out there with different skill sets required. You can't just apply to a few jobs, right, and expect them all to be perfect fits. A lot of it's just kind of trial and error or just really doing your research on where do I best fit. So that's another really important thing to keep in mind. One other thing I'll share is on authenticity. What drew me to TikTok, and you'll see this later on, is that platform in general is kind of this new wave of just, hey, be yourself, put yourself on camera, and like people love that, and you're going to find your people. I'm not going to knock on Facebook and Instagram; they all have their own places and kind of social apps, but really what drew me to TikTok is that you can kind of be yourself. You don't have to be this perfect version on a pedestal. And that plays into the workforce as well when you're considering, okay, I know what I like, I know what I'm good at. Now let me be true to myself. And hey, I may not be so good for that job, even though it seems really cool on paper. Why not try for this other one that's more fit for my skill sets, for my personality? Hey, that company's culture is really interesting. It really matches me. Maybe I'll look more into that. So that's authenticity. And finally, grit. This is the kind of the easy one, but it should not be forgotten. All this is kind of on the precedence of hard work and performance, right? When you do well and you work hard, good things happen for you, and that's no different in your careers. Okay, so more jump into me details, right? So here is my career if I'd planned it, right? Super basic, right? Go to undergrad, figure out my major the first semester, find a job in New York City because you're growing up in Connecticut, you want to get to the city, right? Stay at the same company because I don't want to move around too much. Do the same work in New York, get a promotion, doing the same stuff for the same company, right? And then, move to the burbs of Connecticut, when you want to start a family, all that. And that's textbook. On the next slide, you're going to see how different it actually played out for me. So on the left, you're going to see these little stars in teal, smaller stars being smaller pivot points, bigger stars being kind of these huge pivot points like, oh my gosh, I never expected this would happen for me. We'll go into each of those, but line by line, you'll see, hey, I didn't figure out my major the first semester. I changed majors twice. I ended up deciding to go to grad school because I needed more learning, right? I didn't take one of those first jobs in New York. PepsiCo is based in Westchester. That's an hour north of New York. I had a pretty crappy commute for a long time. I thought I'd stay at the same company, right? Doing the same work. What I ended up doing was really finding a field that I enjoyed and that didn't exist, that I didn't know about in school. I thought I'd stay in the city, right? Ended up moving to Dubai, spending 2-3 years there, then Geneva afterwards. All this stuff I never planned for, right? And then to wrap it up, kind of really moving back, this is just last year. 2020 was a crazy year across the board. especially for me. And I'm fortunate enough for them to be mostly positive events. But we moved back to the US during a pandemic. We were expecting a baby during a pandemic. Half a year after moving back, I left my company of almost 10 years to join TikTok, right? Which didn't even exist a few years ago. And the cheeky thing I'll toss in here is I didn't move to the burbs of Connecticut. I'm in the burbs of New Jersey now. I also never expected that. So really, this is the snapshot of just how different things can play out for you. Okay, so hopefully this has been engaging so far. If not, chime in the chat. But I'm going to go through each of the pivot points and kind of give you a real deep dive into what my thought process was and how this kind of played out for me and kind of redirected my career. So minor pivot point number one was choosing a field of study. I mentioned I didn't know what major I wanted to be, right? I don't know if it's still called ACES, but I was an ACES major. I was exploratory. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Was pretty decent at math, like building things. Thought I'd go into biomedical engineering. Tried that for a semester. Nope, wasn't for me. Did a little reflection. Hey, I really like psychology. I like people. Let me jump into that. Okay, some traction there. But I don't really want to be stuck too much in the theory. I want to make it a little more applied. So let me look more into business courses. And where this landed me was in this kind of niche field of industrial organizational psychology. I'll do a shout out to Dr. Barnes-Farrell, who taught my Intro to IO course. I took a few more electives with her. Thank you for introducing me to IO psychology. But whatever major you are, the point here is really sometimes you have to dig and kind of really on the growth mindset, find out what interests you and keep digging. And eventually you'll land on something that really resonates with you. That's the growth piece. The authenticity piece here is really figuring out like, hey, for engineering for me, I mean, I'm probably not so good at this, right? I like math and stuff, but I mean, it's much more than that. And I didn't really enjoy those courses. And that's true to me. Some of you may actually be engineers and that's for you. So you'll have your own paths, but really kind of exploring and staying true to yourself is key here. But the last thing I'll hit on really is you see the spectrum at the bottom. This was quite planned, right? This wasn't pure chance that I'd taken this Intro to IO Psych course. I looked it up, right? I wanted to see what was there. What's in that? They used to give out books that were about this thick, right? And had all the majors and courses. I dug through that and saw like what, read those one paragraph blurbs on what the majors were. And I found this. So here's an example of where you can take control and where it will have an impact on kind of where you land. So I'm gonna take a drink here. So next, graduated UConn, right, 2010. This is right after the Great Recession, job market not looking so hot. I'm thinking here, what am I going to do with a bachelor's in psychology and in a business minor to boot, I guess. And I figured where I wanted to enter the workforce was a little more in the larger corporates, right? And usually to get into those, you need a little more education. So I looked into grad schools and decided on a master's in, surprise, IO psychology. The story here really is, even though I decided on the field of study, right, I didn't know what I was going to do actually in the workforce. So for IO psychology, there's an annual conference called SIOP, so the Society of IO Psychologists. And there they do like symposiums and panels and whatnot. So as a grad student, I attended that. And the story goes, so there's a symposium that was being done on this field called HR analytics. You know the story, right? Big data analytics, super trending at the time, still trending. That was really cool for me. I said, hey, I want to do that. My program at the time had one stats course, and that wasn't enough for me. I knew it wouldn't equip me well enough to become an HR analytics professional. So I sought out courses in Stern that were more stats based. I took other stats courses from other programs. So I would say here is there's a little bit of the growth piece of looking for what interests you and exploring. Go to those conferences, attend those speaker symposiums, find out what's interesting for you. The grit comes in this next piece in applying for internships, right? You all know the drill where it's, hey, we're looking for an entry-level role that must have 2 to 3 years experience, right? It's kind of like, it's kind of an oxymoron. The piece here is really grit, I would say. So I kid you not, I applied for dozens of internships. And the story I'll share here is, in my program, there are people a year ahead of you, right? It's a 2-year program. I'd applied for an internship. Come to find out I didn't get it. Someone a year ahead of me in the program had gotten that internship. Fast forward 8 months from then, I applied for another internship, didn't get it. Surprise, it was the same dude who had applied for the other internship and gotten it from my program a year ahead of me that had gotten that second one as well. So you'll see later on where kind of finding your unique value proposition comes into play, but the grit is also important here. So if I'm applying for the same jobs everyone in my program is, that's not really differentiating for me, right? The other piece of grit here is PepsiCo. I eventually got the PepsiCo internship and was in grad school full time. So I was taking a shuttle from New York, 7 a.m. up to Westchester, putting in full time, catching the train at 5:30 to get back into the city for my 6:20 classes, getting out at 8:10, and doing whatever work before sleep. So a lot of this is the grind, is the hustle, that is a piece. And where this falls in the spectrum is a little bit of happenstance, a little bit of chance, right? A little bit of planning. So that's that piece. The other thing I'll share here is this is probably the biggest pivot point for me. So if this had not happened, I guarantee you I'd not be where I was today. This pivot point was really the fact that I joined PepsiCo and I was not in an HR analytics role. What happened was they were planning to start an HR analytics COE, the first in the company. And I saw this and I raised my hand and I said, hey, I've been studying for this. This is interesting for me. Can I get on the team? And so I think there's a little bit of being proactive here, which is why the arrow isn't fully on the left. But a lot of this is like, I'm in the right place at the right time. PepsiCo decided to create an HR analytics COE, and I just happened to start working for them, right? It's like perfect, it's perfect timing. So those are some of the things where it's purely by chance or more so on chance. And you have to recognize that, and I recognize that was a huge opportunity, and I raised my hand. Fast forward 2 years after being on the analytics COE, performing well, et cetera, they needed a guy to do that analytics work for their Asia, Middle East, North Africa sector. By the way, that role is based in Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. And they needed someone to move out to do that. And I took a look at my girlfriend, now wife, and say, hey, will you move with me? And we did. So that was the ticket to Dubai, really. And if you kind of look at the other pivot points, if I had not found IO psychology, if I had not gone to that conference and saw the symposium on HR analytics, if I had not raised my hand to take more stats courses, I wouldn't have been as primed for this leap to move to Dubai, right? So I know that's a lot. I can be a little long-winded, but it's meant to build up and show you that these small things you do over the years can add up to that big chance moment, and you'll be ready for it when it comes. One minor pivot point I wanted to toss in here was around really, I'd spent a lot of time in HR analytics, right? This was really interesting for me. I'd spent so much time preparing, and I had a little reflection. I said, hey, I kind of don't want to do this anymore, right? There are tons of really, really talented people entering the data science field, right? They actually major in stats, right? As opposed to taking a few courses and having on-the-job experience. They're a lot smarter than me. And also, I like being in front of people. I like being more on a strategic side as well. So part of this, you'll see later on, one of the things I'll leave you with is managing people's expectations of you and your career path. And here's an example of where I did not want to be branded as, hey, that HR analytics guy. That's all he does. So I think part of what you can do in terms of your mindset is being aware of what other people think of you. Had I not pivoted to this HR business partner role, people would have probably thought that's all Clinton can do is HR analytics. And so that's a little bit of self-reflection in terms of authenticity. It's a little bit of grit in terms of performing well enough where people will take chances on you. I think we all can agree that HR analytics is pretty opposite to some of what you'll do in a business partnering role. And so performing well, building relationships, people will want to invest in these kind of moves that you want to do. Spectrum wise, that was completely driven by me, right? There's a little chance of like, is there a job open for a business partner role in Geneva? But I drove a lot of those conversations, right? I raised my hand. So that's the point I want to leave you with for this pivot point. All right, last pivot point. I don't want to keep you too much into the weeds, but this was the other game-changing one, and this is the one maybe a lot of you have tuned in for in terms of, hey, TikTok, how did this guy get there? So yes, I was with PepsiCo for almost 10 years. I was actually almost going to take another role in Europe. We loved being abroad. It was super cool. Could have moved to another city in Europe. But the unthinkable happens, right? Pandemic, we're expecting a kid. Maybe it's time to come home. So I ended up finding a role back in New York, in the US, just about a year ago. And that was still with PepsiCo. Fast forward a few months, got that cold LinkedIn message from my now manager. And she said, hey, you're doing really well at Pepsi, but what about TikTok? We're growing super fast. I think you'll find what we're doing is really cool. You want to come join us. So again, you do your due diligence, you do the research. And after I'd done those things, I figured, hey, this is my chance moment. This is the big thing that I didn't expect that maybe I'll take advantage of. So you all know that I moved to TikTok. I took this HR PMO job. There's a lot I'm still learning, just being 5 months into the role. But it's a lot to learn, and who knows if it's the right decision, right? But here's an example of me taking that leap of faith and really seeing how it's going to play out, making the best decision I can in that moment, finding that growth, and also seeing, hey, it's more of a fit now. I've been at PepsiCo 10 years. Maybe I can learn a lot more from a different company. So this on the spectrum is more towards chance, right? Because I would have never gotten that LinkedIn message. I didn't even know what TikTok was, embarrassingly enough, before I'd gotten that message. So that's where it falls. You'll see they all landed in different points of the spectrum. So there's stuff you can't control, and there's stuff that's just pure chance. All right, so I'm coming to a close here. I know these things can be quite heavy, but I want to give you some tangible points that you can take right after the session. Sit down and take the slide, take a snapshot, whatever you want to do. But what can you control? Number one is find your interest, right? I know most of you are graduating, but even though you're entering the workforce, you still have lots of opportunity to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your career, right? You're not retiring until your 50s, or if you're lucky, earlier than that, maybe. We got a long time to figure out what it is that interests you. So take those courses, do some research, take electives. I mean, I remember doing a lab course with working with mice and whatnot in the psych lab. That really wasn't for me. I knew I didn't really want to do research. That was more long-term. That could be for you. So do those things and figure it out. Number two is invest in your personal development. Whether it's in school, your company, join those clubs, take those leadership roles. My shout out to the Asian American Cultural Center is getting involved with them, a campus resource, by the way. Super unlocked my personal development. I would have never considered running as a representative for Homecoming King for ASAC, right? That was super out of my comfort zone, out of the box, and I did it and was better for it, and it was a super amazing experience I will remember to this day. I was part of this silly b-boy group on campus, right? We performed during Asian Night in Jorgensen. If you would have asked me 15 years ago if I would have ever performed on stage, I would have told you no. But do these things, right? It grows character. It shows you what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. That's all part of the journey. Another thing I mentioned earlier was reflecting on your unique value proposition. You're graduating with hundreds, thousands of other UConn students, right? And yes, they're all colleagues and buddies, but you also need to when you think about what role to take, think about what makes it unique. Yes, we all graduated from UConn. Yes, I have this specific major, but what is my specific add to this role or to this company? The better you can articulate that, I think the better off you'll be. For me, for example, most HR professionals don't necessarily have a background in analytics, right? That was kind of the value proposition for me very early on. Now it's kind of pivoting and saying, hey, how many HR professionals have experience working abroad, have experience in analytics and HR business partnering and talent management? So that's just kind of my mentality of how I've thought about my career, and I think it'd be useful if you did the same. In terms of roles in companies, do your research. You all know this. I'm not going to harp on this one. The one I do want to call it here is being proactive about reaching out. So do those informational interviews at your company. Say you've got the foot in the door, you start at entry level, set up coffee with people, right? People love talking about themselves. They love hearing about new, fresh, energetic talent. So do those. I kid you not, when I joined some of my companies early on, I set up dozens of coffee chats, brought a notepad. We would sit outside during a lunch break or something and just chat about, like, what do you do? How can I get into what you're doing right now? Do those cold LinkedIn messages. If you're both in the random group on LinkedIn for whatever hobby or interest you're in, just find them, message them and say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Do you want to grab, 20 minutes on a call? Now being on the other side of that, I love when people do that for me, right? I kind of want to give back. I want to hear what's happening, what's coming up with new grads. So don't be bashful or shy about those things. Quickly, the second to last bullet is reflect on your priorities, right? Not everyone has the luxury of doing whatever they want, right? Whether it be aging parents, wanting to be close to your family, it doesn't matter, right? Those are your priorities, and no one can knock you for those. So reflect on them and be clear on them, so that when those opportunities come up, be like, hey, why am I not applying to jobs in London, in Tokyo? I've never thought about it, but I can, because there's nothing holding me back. On the flip side, yeah, maybe I can't take that job in New York because, I got to take care of family in Connecticut. That's also fine, but just be clear on what those priorities are for you. Last point here is the kind of managing expectations other people have of you. This is super key, because no one is going to represent your value better than you can, right? People will look at you and draw a really quick assumption, just because that's what we do as humans, right? We don't have time to process everything. So we come up with one quick liner on, hey, Clinton is good at X, Y, Z. So think about what people would maybe thinking about you, and try to, as you can, just influence those thinkings. Hey, I worked on this project. Hey, I have this background. Hey, I majored in this, which would be useful for this project. Those are all useful things to do. So to wrap up here, I've been talking a while. Hopefully this has been useful. Don't stress. You're graduating from UConn. It's a highly touted institution. Be proud of how far you've come, right? You've put in work. You can finally celebrate a little bit, so be proud. Other thing, don't stress. Pandemic, job market, all those things aside, you saw a lot of these things are by chance, right? So don't stress. It'll all be fine. You'll find your place in the workforce. You'll find what you love. And believe in yourself and what makes you unique. This is not meant to be cheesy. This is real. No one is going to be exactly you in terms of your skill set and your personality. So that's your value, right? Is your unique self. And the last thing I'll leave you with here is we're going through some crazy stuff right now, right? Current events, pandemic. Just be nice to everyone. The more we can all be nice to each other, I think the better we'll all be for it. So that's my piece. That's all I've got. So thank you for joining. I hope you found some of this to be useful. If you want to reach out on LinkedIn or the Husky Mentor Network, any of that stuff, glad to be helpful if I can. So again, thanks for joining, and that's my bit.
Thank you so much, Clinton. So we're going to move now to the Q&A portion. I have a number of questions I'm going to field here. We're going to spend some time in Q&A, and we have some wrap-up stuff afterwards. So one of the most, I think, probably important questions to come through: modern or Sally's a pizza?
Actually, my favorite's neither of those. But if you limit me to those two questions, I'd say modern. The Italian bomb at Modern is my favorite pie there. My favorite pie in general actually is just a plain pepperoni pizza at bar. So bring on the hate if that's not your favorite pie.
Yeah. All right. So another question that came through. I'm interested in working for a startup or company that's trending, but my parents have told me it's risky because I could be without a job in the future. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll give a two-parter for this one. One is do a little reflection on kind of what your priorities are. So I'll be frank with you. Graduating for me, I was in a lot of debt. I wanted to start making money, and so I wanted to find a job that was stable and had a solid income, right? If that is your priority, maybe your parents are right. Join one of these big companies, a little more stable, etc. But if you can afford, literally and otherwise, to take a startup job where you're going to learn a ton, it's going to be super fast. May not have that marquee like company title that you're looking for, but it could be useful for unlocking your career as well. So I'd say just reflect on what's important for you and do a little risk assessment. That's how I would do it.
I was wondering what some of the challenges that you faced when you started working abroad were, and how did you feel it helped you out in the long run?
Yeah, it's not rocket science. It's what you would think, right? Different cultures, different ways of working. In Dubai, it was really cool because we had an office of 300 with 50 plus nationalities represented all over the world. It was a really cool environment, and but people work differently, right? So I think you can look up this guy Hofstede. He's usually the go-to for like cultural differences and models, but you have different approaches to like being more direct versus indirect. Kind of the chain of command. Is it more higher distance or lower distance? How much power plays into all this stuff? So navigating that and trying not to be the ugly American, so to speak, was a learning curve. And I would say it's one of those things that it's hard to quantify, right? We as psychologists try to, but it's hard to quantify how much better for it you are after having this international experience. But I can say it's made me a lot more humble. It's opened me to a lot more points of view. And I think a lot of times when you grow up in a Western-focused education, Western companies, you can be closed off to a lot of different thinking. So that's kind of my benefit, I think. It was difficult, but when you get to know people on a deeper level, it opens your thinking in general.
So there's a theme here in many of these questions. So I'll read you one statement that is coming across a number of times, and it says, "Thank you, Clinton, for speaking with us. Your story made me feel better about my current situation." One of the questions that comes along with this one is, do you have to have everything figured out right now as a senior?
No, I mean you really don't. I didn't have anything figured out. I think what you can do is, don't, aside from like a 5-year plan, just like reflect, do your thinking, like whether it's on, if it's on the John, you're in the shower, you're taking a road trip, like you're thinking places, think about this stuff. Don't be passive about it. So you don't have to have everything planned out, but be reflecting on kind of where am I now, and am I on the right path that I want to take. As a senior, again, I was told this a lot. You're in your early 20s, right? You've got so much ahead of you, and even if the next 5 years are bust, you're still going to be fine. There's plenty of runway until you retire, unless you hit the jackpot and you retire at like 35 or 40. There's plenty of runway left for you to redirect to find what you really enjoy doing.
So when you were faced with those pivot points, how confident were you with those choices?
Yeah, good question. Let me reflect. God, I don't think I was too confident. I was probably like majority confident, like 60%. So nothing's certain. I'm reflecting on my decision to leave for Dubai, and that's a tough one, right? Because you're leaving family. I'm really close with my mother, actually. And as being raised in a single parent household, it's tough, right? Leaving my mom, I've spent like at that point 20 plus years with, to move, an 8-hour flight away in the Middle East. That's not easy, and I wasn't sure. But the best you can do is just kind of keep moving forward and planning like, hey, when am I going to come back? What is my horizon? So I think when you plan for, I'm going to be gone for 2-3 years, that's manageable. Ended up going away for 5 years, but that's didn't plan on that, but that's fine. So I think to answer your question, I was not certain, but you can find comfort in planning a bit.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to differentiate themselves but can't go to grad school right away?
Yeah, I got a lot of these questions now, especially because of the pandemic in these mentor sessions. So you can't really like job hop or, you know, take an apprenticeship or anything like that. There are a lot of really good online resources. It sounds really silly, but these, what are they called? These MOOCs, are they? Massive online something open courses. They're free. See a lot of these, like, not just UConn, but Ivy Leagues, really good institutions giving free courses. Sometimes they come with free degrees. What is it? Even Google, I think, recently just launched or is launching kind of a training program that you do online, and then the degree or certification you graduate with ties directly to jobs they're hiring for. So look into these, look into certifications, and depending on what industry you're in, I guess it depends, but build a portfolio, right? Some of these things you can do, whether they're hackathons or different sorts of projects you can do kind of, what's the word, for free, really. Look into those things. I think they're really beneficial, actually.
Is the day-to-day work life different in Geneva versus Dubai versus the US?
Yeah, completely. So Dubai is really cool because I'm a bit of a night owl, and so here, especially in the burbs of Connecticut, everything closes by like 8 or 9, right? Dubai, things are open till like midnight at least, some until 2 a.m. You want to stroll around and grab some food, you can do that. They have the biggest mall in the world too, right? So all that stuff's open late. It's on the beach, so you've got that beach vibe going for you as well, which is not so great when you're trying to get done stuff done at work. But having the beach there gives a really cool vibe as well. Geneva, gosh, between the two cities, they're both super expensive. The data point I usually share is it's hard to get good Mexican when you're abroad, and even if it's not real Mexican, getting burritos in Geneva costs us like $40 just for my wife and I, 2 burritos. So yeah, super expensive, and not even like the real stuff. But yeah, it was cool. You can go skiing at some of the best resorts and slopes. So yeah, I could talk about either of those cities ad nauseum, but they were super different, but really, really cool.
So to shift focus a little bit, you mentioned being cognizant of what other people think of you. So what do you think is the best approach to making a better first impression?
Yeah, good question. I guess it depends on the context, right? Is this like a client meeting? Is this a coffee chat? I will say it takes practice to speak well about yourself. It takes practice to speak well, period, right? I don't even think I speak that well, right? But the important thing is like it's the elevator pitch, it's all this stuff that they tell you in school. I think that's important. So whether like you don't have to practice it in front of a mirror, if that works for you, great. I don't do that because I find it really awkward. But the skill set of speaking well about yourself, having reflected on your skill sets and knowing, hey, I'm pretty decent at XYZ. Here are my sub bullet points for why I'm good at XYZ. And like not to the point where you've rehearsed it and you're a machine, but like that's natural and authentic. That's a really useful skill set, I would say. First impressions, for presentations, for just meeting new people. I think it's a pretty important skill set. It comes naturally to some people. People are very surprised to hear that I'm introverted. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that you can be extroverted, you can be introverted, doesn't matter. You can learn these skill sets. You can train yourself to be better at these things if it's not natural for you. I'm exhausted at the end of the day from extroverting on calls, but I've gotten pretty decent at it over the years through practice. So that's something I would say.
Got a couple questions related to kind of like HRE type stuff. One was, do you have any tips for someone who is seeking a career in HR?
Yeah. A couple things. One is, for a lot of professions like accounting, you have CPAs and you have these real kind of programs and certifications as proof that like I know what I'm doing. So one of the more recent things they've done for HR is created these certifications. So one's through the Society for HR Management, SHRM. Long story short, these are pretty decent. They charge you money for it, but a lot of companies now find them useful. They put them on job listings. So one is looking at certifications, because you can do that online. You can study for it like you do for GRE or SAT. That's one. Two is HR. Surprise to all Toby from The Office fans. HR is not Toby from The Office. HR is much bigger than that. So you have the whole spectrum from HR analytics to compensation and benefits, talent management, org development, HR business partnering, employee relations. It's huge, and they're also different. So I would say do your research on what jobs exist in HR. Do some of these informational calls. Grab one with me. Glad to chat. But find where in HR most interests you, and kind of go from there. That'd be the second thing I'd say.
So there's a number of questions in here, in our office we get this question all the time. How important is undergraduate major? What am I gonna, how important is an econ major? How important is a psych major? This is questions that we get all the time. Love to hear your perspective about the importance of your undergraduate major as far as the career implications, let's say 10 years out.
Yeah, good question. I'm gonna give you a non-answer, but a real answer, if that makes sense. So it depends. So if you're like me and I was a psych major, and this should be the case for most liberal arts majors, other people can give me hate, but it doesn't matter. So you're gonna enter the workforce. There are gonna be so many other technical things that are more important for your success. So don't stress. If you have the option of grad school, not always immediately. You can always go back for school, right? Like I've plenty of people I know that went back to school in their 30s. That's fine, 40s, whatever. But it's different for other majors. So my wife graduated from the pharmacy school, right? That's super technical. There are real kind of time-sensitive tracks, and like you need to take the courses you need to by the time you graduate. So I'd say for technical majors like engineering, pharmacy, I'm not gonna say pre-med, right? Because you can apply for med school with a non-med major technically, right? So it depends, just to be cognizant of what you're ultimately trying to get to and how technical that might be.
I think we got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So here's one.
Sure.
What advice would you give to someone who possibly made the wrong decision at pivot points, looking retrospectively? Is it better to fix the error or just stay where it is?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's hard to advise without knowing exactly what pivot point that is. But I'll give you the optimistic answer of it. You'll be fine. It doesn't matter, unless you're telling me that like there's some program that like I have to complete, or some prerequisite requirement I have to fulfill before I'm a certain age and it's time sensitive, then it doesn't matter, right? Like you have, like I mentioned, you have so much runway ahead of you. Correcting it, I guess that depends as well. So everything's shifting. So again, it's hard to tell without knowing the context, but I would say everything's changing. So like the fact that data is becoming so more important, for example, I didn't take too many stats courses when I was a psych major. Should I have stayed like an extra year to take stats courses? Probably not necessary. I was able to make up for it by taking stats courses in grad school, or even just doing some of the self-learning online stuff. So that's my personal example of I didn't have to go back to fix it. Just kind of find what's available for you now in this moment, and how you can get that learning or experience. So I'm sorry I couldn't help more directly, but hopefully that gives you some ideas.
So final question we have for you is, how do I stay positive in such a challenging environment applying and interviewing for jobs?
Yeah, it's not you. It's a lot of it's the system. I'll share the example I gave. So I applied for like dozens of internships when I was in grad school, right? And this, by the way, is in New York City, the hottest job market, arguably in the world, right? Lots of smart people in the city trying to grind, get those jobs. And so there's that difficulty. The one thing I want to be real upfront with is by pure volume, it's very difficult to find people. So our recruitment teams, I'll give you the example. You could be the perfect candidate for this one role that we're looking to staff, but we may not be able to find you with our keywords and through all the screening we're doing just by pure volume, right? Companies are getting hundreds, if not thousands of applications. You could be perfect for the job, but we may not just find you. So a lot of it's a little depressing to say, but it's just pure volume and chance. And that's why I say, do your due diligence by turning out the volume of applications. Don't be disheartened, and just kind of think of it a little bit more as a numbers game. Some of these cases, it's truly a numbers game. And so the more you can get your name out there, the better. So don't be disheartened. It happens to everyone. Once you get those few hits early on in your career, it'll steamroll from there.
All right, great. So thank you so much for the questions. We've got a couple more items just to wrap up the program here. I want to just real brief reminder here. You're getting inundated with emails from our office regarding the Huskies Moving On survey. We're looking just to hear what your plans are. So follow that link. You can find it on our website, but that's something that's very important for us and for future generations of Huskies. Just so we can keep track of where you land. If that's grad school, if that's a job, if that's I'm still looking, we want to know all of that stuff. And then, I also want to take some time to thank some of our partners here that helped us put this program on. It really wouldn't be possible without our partnership with our friends at the Asian American Cultural Center and the Yukon Foundation. So I want to take some time to just thank and introduce Angela Rolla from the Asian American Cultural Center, one of our key sponsors of this program, to say a few words.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me. Can you hear me?
We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Let's see. I don't know why you can't. Well, I know we're getting close to the bewitching hour. So you can't see me, but as long as you can hear me, first of all, I want to thank the Center for Career Development for asking us to partner. I was very excited when I heard that they had asked Clinton to be the keynote speaker tonight. Clinton and I just reconnected actually several months ago on his return to the United States. Although, and Clinton doesn't know this, and we recently had a 2-hour conversation that I have been following his career. Social media is wonderful, and it's been great to see his progress and his successes both here and abroad. And so to all of the seniors out there, I want you to know if you have made connections on campus, please continue those because it's really important. If you take nothing away from Clinton's talk, the idea of networking is really, really important. And then the opportunity to give back to your alma mater, I think, is also important. And I know that is important to Clinton, that he wants to come back. He wants to give back to not only the community, but the larger Yukon community. And I do think that that makes us a better university, a better global community. And so I encourage you to do that. So with that, I am so happy that we have a wonderful partnership with CCD. Thank you, Clinton, for being here. Thank you for sharing. I cannot believe it's been over 10 years since you've been with us. But I will continue to follow you now that we're back in contact with one another. Thank you for that. And so I want to congratulate all of the seniors on this call, wish you the best of luck, and go Huskies.
Thank you, Angela. And I also just want to introduce one other of our partners. That's Jess Sokol. She's the Director of Alumni Events, Traditions, and Student Programs, just to say a few words as well. Hi, Jess.
Hi, I think my camera's working, so hopefully everybody can see me. But as Erin said, I'm Jess Sokol from the UConn Foundation's Office of Alumni Relations, and if my name sounds familiar to anyone, I help coordinate the UConn senior program, so you may have seen my name in reply emails to you about things like yearbooks and commencement regalia and other fun senior stuff. And I just wanted to say that I know a lot of you have mixed emotions, likely about commencement approaching, and I wanted to say something that you may not be expecting, and that is welcome. You are now joining our global alumni family, which is 270,000 alumni strong so far. And what Angela said really was spot on. We hope that you'll continue to stay connected to UConn through us and through other means, and that one day maybe we'll have some of you back on campus to speak, just like Clinton did this afternoon. I wish you all the best. Good luck. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions ever. The Office of Alumni Relations is here for you for that. Huskies Forever part of the Students Stay Huskies Forever motto. So happy to be a part of this event. Thank you, Clinton. Don't be surprised if you hear more from us now that some of us know how amazing you are who haven't met you before. But yeah, congratulations, class of 2021. And please reach out if we can ever be helpful.
And I just want to echo that sentiment. You know, congratulations. This is really a momentous achievement. And I just want to let you know that we're here for you. You know, Center for Career Development is here for you now. We're here for you after you graduate. So love to hear good news. We'd love to help you work through challenges and things like that, so you know where to find us. And we really do look forward to inviting you someday in the future to offer your words of wisdom and the things that surprised you when you entered into your profession. So again, please remember to share your post-graduation plans with us with that survey. And I want to leave you with a short 1.5-minute video that some folks at the Center for Career Development put together for you. And I'd like you to just enjoy some of the scenery on campus, because I know many of us have not really been able to enjoy that like we may have expected to this year. So thank you so much for joining us.